Right, okay. I think we're live. So we've got, by my recollection, check the timing. It's 22:25 in the UK. We've got about 5 minutes before the Atheist Experience starts. As ever, I will be live streaming the ACA's, the Atheist Experience Live. So I'll be live streaming their live stream. This is with their permission. And I'd like to have a brief word before we start. The idea is that as we watch the Atheist Experience together, hopefully there will be people who will wish to consider some of the things that are discussed and take a moment, have a moment, experience a moment where actually we can stop and think about what they're talking about, and maybe discuss it. Now, you'll either be linked to the live chat, in which case I will try to make sure that I keep my eye on it, and I can pause, and if anything comes up then we can hit it. The second aspect of this is if any parts of the program you think you wish to comment on, then shove them in the comments. I promise you I will reply to them all. On past experience there will not be millions of them, so that should not be too difficult for me. So hopefully that will work out okay. And before we start, with about 3 or 4 minutes left before we go, don't worry, I'm kind of not going to forget. It'll all be okay, trust me. I'd like to mention something that's kind of on my mind, and it is about the idea of a little bit of knowledge goes a long way. Unfortunately, in certain areas that's not true. This is an issue for the program, the Atheist Experience. I'm really impressed with the fact that every week a bunch of people will phone in, and when they phone in to give their argument, they are obviously prepared. You would be mad not to prepare your argument. In an awful lot of cases, I'm pretty sure, because I guess this is what I would do, I'm pretty sure that they've got what they want to say written down, typed up, whatever, however you want to kind of, represent it. They've probably got written down what they actually want to say. They've got their logical argument. They've probably considered what the hosts of the show will come back with, and they've kind of planned their different strategies based on what the hosts will say. And of course, the aim is then to try and prepare themselves to give the best possible argument and defense of their argument that they possibly can. Okay, well, I think that one of the problems is that an awful lot of people actually end up in a situation where they wish to prepare themselves by having done some reading. There's an awful lot of really good science books out there for the general public, which is great. And I would recommend looking up books by Richard Dawkins, who seems to be going through a slightly bad time at the moment, but don't let that put you off. Sam Harris, Lawrence Krauss, Christopher Hitchens, who sadly is not with us now, but his books are amazing. Look him up on YouTube. And Sean Carroll. At the moment, I'm working through one of Sean Carroll's books with some of my students, and it's really good going, but it's not straightforward. And there lies the problem. Sometimes when you read these books that are written based on science for the general public, what happens is the author has to then try to simplify things, put them in a nice simple way, and unfortunately what happens is the reader then thinks, yeah, okay, I kind of understand that, I get that, and they feel then that they are empowered to discuss it as if they were an expert. Now, I'm going to have to cut this short because the Atheist Experience is about to start and I don't want to miss it, but I would say that I'm about to, I've just kind of there you go, I've just kind of stopped the sound there. just while I just finish off my train of thought. What I would say is, in order to be an expert in something, that doesn't just mean that you've kind of read a book about it. It means that you have spent years and years studying it in detail, addressing issues that you don't understand, working through them, ploughing through them to try and get a better understanding. And sometimes it's slow progress. And that's what it means to have an expertise. And unfortunately, reading a scientific book or a book based on science from the perspective of this book is written for the general public, that just does not give you the power to argue scientifically. It just gives you an appreciation of some of the issues. And that's one of the problems that happens on the Atheist Experience. People phone in and they've read a book, they've got an idea, they've listened to a pastor, they've got some idea which is actually scientifically not rigid at all. Their arguments are not rigid, they're not structured, they're not strong arguments at all. But what happens is they argue as if they are, and then they kind of look foolish, but they don't think they do, because they think their arguments are sound, and they're not. And that keeps coming up. So maybe we'll address that in the program. I don't know, but we'll see. Here we go.
This program is live, and I have a number of announcements to get to, just as always, and I'll try to get through them fairly quickly but thoroughly. For those of you who are watching us on YouTube right now, if you're watching live, well, first of all, thank you, because you don't have to watch live. You can watch the shows after the fact. And I'm getting ready to tell you that once this show's over, you should go back and watch some other shows after the fact as well. But for those who are watching live, we appreciate the participation. Remember that chat's a privilege, but also down below the chat is a donation link. 100% of your donations go directly to the Atheist Community of Austin. They don't pass go. They don't collect $200 from Google or YouTube or anybody else. That is
Monopoly,
one of the primary ways that you can help support this show. There are a number of other ways, including merchandise that you can get by going to bit.ly/AEN merch. Right there, you can get coffee cups and t-shirts. And I don't know what else is there right now, but that's one of the things.
Get the cup.
You can also become a member,
or rather in the UK,
on YouTube,
get the mug,
which will get you access to custom icons and emojis or all the goodies there for making you look especially special in chat. And you can join at patreon.com/the Atheist Experience to contribute there as well. For those of you who want to have conversations outside of this, not only have we pointed people to the ACA Discord, but there are two Facebook groups that we've been directing people to. There's the Atheist Experience fan group, that's at AXPFG on Facebook, and the Atheist Experience private fan group, which is AXPFG. And I know that it's Sunday and you're watching us, and maybe earlier today you caught an episode of Talk Heathen. If you didn't, you should go watch it, because Johnny Angel and Kenneth Leonard were on and they did outstanding, along with a new intro there and everything else. But in between between Talk Heathen and Atheist Experience, we are airing episodes of Nonprofit Sundays at 3:00, which just ended. New hosts, new segments, everything there for you to catch up on. It's not a live show, so you don't have to worry about necessarily catching it live, which is one of the great things where you can just make your whole Sunday let me sit on the couch, have some ice cream, do whatever it is that makes me happy, and just start with Talk
play
Heathen
Dungeons and
Dragons
Dragons
right till Jenna and I finish on Discord would be nice. In addition, you can go to tiny.cc/AEN podcasts. And from there, you can get podcasts at your one-stop destination for all of the shows that are part of the Atheist Experience Network. Secular Sexuality, Atheist Experience, Talk Heathen, Truth Wanted, all of it out there in bite-sized podcasts for you. You're going to want to, because all these YouTube channels are all part of the same network, but they're individual channels, you're going to want to go to each one of them and subscribe, like, follow, all of that stuff, so you get notifications about when there are new podcasts going up. If you aren't familiar with the other shows, if you're just watching Atheist Experience, drop over there to the podcast and get yourself some audio-only stuff to listen to, so you can figure out what other shows you might be wanting to tune in to. Maybe you have questions about the LGBTQ community, about sexuality, about the baggage remaining from your religion that's holding you from, I don't know, having good orgasms or engaging with partners that you want to. You can go to Secular Sexuality and talk to some people who actually know. We're encouraged by all of that. And for all of these shows, there's a group of people who are behind the scenes, who are screening your calls and running the audio and video and piecing things together and coming up with graphics for new segment. And that's these yahoos here who are going to put themselves, look at that. Never have we seen a more motley crew of volunteers who are the whole reason that we get to come on here and have fun and engage with you. So thank you so much to our huge crew. I don't think I have any other announcements, but if so, somebody on the crew will message me in just a moment and say, oh, you forgot this one important thing. But I think, did you have something you wanted to talk about before we get to calls at all, Jen?
Well, no, just one thing, just in case people are wondering where to find Eric and V now, you can find them on their own channel that they're starting next Sunday. So if you want, you can add that Skeptic Generation at 11:30 before Talk Heathen, and then Nonprofits and AXP and all that. So just in case people want to know where to find, so you can do both.
All right. We have... Well, since last week's show, my
really
guest was from England and some of the callers from England. I say we start with England this week. We've got Peter in England who believes the quest to convince everyone that atheism is the correct path is futile. And we're chasing our own tail and wants to convince us why. So welcome to the show, Peter. I'm not sure that that's necessarily what we're trying to do, but I'm
when my fellow countrymen do this.
You think it's a waste of our time.
Good evening, and thanks for taking my call. I'm ringing up from England, and I'm an atheist, so I believe that all religions are man-made. But I've watched a lot of your debates in the past with certain theists, and I believe that a lot of the time it comes across like it's like you're banging your head against a brick wall. Specifically when I watched you against Ray Comfort and Side 10, specifically when I watched you against Ray Comfort and Side 10.
I just say, banging your head against a brick wall is a very British statement. I don't know whether you say that in other countries, but that is so British. I'm also picking up on his accent. I'll not go there.
Rugen Kate. But my question to you is this. What evidence at that particular time in history, when you look at a theist, specifically something like the Christian faith, would persuade you that to become a theist?
Oh, such an old question, this one.
You want to know what persuaded us to be a theist?
No. What evidence, if anything, what evidence could persuade you? Because I hear a lot of people coming on and
you're asking now. So you're not asking what originally convinced us, because both of us used to be theists. You're saying now, right now, what evidence could they present that would convince us?
So when the book was made 2,000 years ago, what evidence specifically could have made you into a theist? Because there's no evidence now.
And everybody come on, Peter. You're clearly not being clear here.
And this is my evidence. So I can't see that any evidence from the year of 000 could persuade anybody.
I think what Peter's getting at is, was there any evidence that could have happened 2,000 years ago that would convince you today? I think that's what he means. But I think they're confused over whether he means what evidence now would be suitable.
And yet it does all the time, including me and countless others who believe the Bible. So we know for a fact, it is undeniable that this evidence or the claims that are in the Bible has convinced billions of people over the last 2,000 years. Whether or not it should, I don't think it should, is a separate issue, but it has. And so we live in a world where people are constantly being convinced of this. Every single day, there are new people who believe in what the Bible has to say.
Yeah, I don't want to argue with Matt, but I actually don't accept what he's just said. And that's not common for me to disagree with him, because actually Matt is really, really good, and generally he talks complete sense. I don't think that billions and billions of people there are billions and billions of people in the world who believe in the Abrahamic God, which is basically Islam, the Jews, the Christians. They all believe in the same God. They might have a different interpretation of what that means, but they believe in the same God. It is the same God. I don't believe that, for example, the Christians all believe that they believe in that God because of the evidence of the Bible, because I think most Christians do not read the Bible. Most Christians will only read the bits of the Bible that are covered when they're told to basically look at them when they're in church. I don't think that most Christians, and certainly most of the Christians that I know when I was a believer, I don't think that most of them kind of read the Bible. They might read just little snippets of it. So I actually don't think that most people think that they believe because of the evidence that is the Bible. I don't think that's true.
Every single day, there are new people who believe in what the Bible has to say. So that's the whole point of what we're doing.
We've got at least one person
we know
this.
You're
what do you think? Do you think the Bible is the evidence that people actually use?
We'd like to know what that good reason is, and in the entire history of humanity, people haven't been able to justify
away on that keyboard.
Belief. But that's what we're trying to point out, that if in fact this were true, the evidence doesn't support it. The evidence doesn't support believing it. And so the purpose of the show is to get people to tell what they believe and why, and to address the why. So there's no point in asking us what we think should convince us, because I don't think anything in the Bible should convince anyone. But people aren't particularly rational, and people aren't particularly skeptical. And so they fall into those beliefs, and it's my job to address those. It's Jenna's job to address those and say, hey, we don't think you have a good reason for believing. Or if they do come up with a good reason, then it's our job to say, wow, you've presented a good reason. Now we accept that.
That's my dog in the room with me.
Personally, I believe that no person on that will be able to come onto this call ever will be able to convince you with any relevant evidence.
Why?
So you're because it's a man-made fallacy.
Okay,
so,
no. You've just not stop, Peter. You've just made an assertion that shifts the burden of proof to you. You've just said that all the God claims are man-made, and that no one will ever be able to convince us, which is irrelevant. The purpose of the show, if they could convince us, great, we'll be convinced. If they can't, it's to expose that to them so that they know that they're not being convinced for a good reason. So how is it futile to try to teach people skepticism?
Because they're so blind in their faith that they will never be able to.
And yet, Peter, here I sit as someone previously blinded in that faith, someone you would have given up on, and because somebody didn't give up, I have now changed my position. I was a Bible-believing Southern Baptist fundamentalist Christian who possibly believed in a young earth and any number of things. How do you tell the difference between someone like me, who believed and can change their mind, and someone who believes who won't change their mind? How do you tell the difference? Because clearly you don't think it's possible.
I don't think it's possible unless the person can, like yourself. In your case, what you did was you took a back step and you had a look at the facts and then weighed up the facts and made your mind up and changed your mind from there.
I know what I did. I know what, Peter, I'm asking you.
Yeah.
I know what I did. You said this is a waste of time. How do you tell that? Because we've had callers. How many people do you think have changed their mind because of this show? How many?
A percentage, round about 5%.
No. Okay, so no matter what percentage you came up with, it's thousands and thousands of people, because I've heard from many of them. So if we've changed the mind of thousands of people, how is this an exercise in futility?
Maybe not for some of the people that you talk to that are on the borderline, because some people that ring you up are actually questioning their faith.
I fail to see the point of this, I'm afraid, Peter.
Peter, why can't you answer the question? Why can't you? You called in to tell us this was an exercise in futility, and you just admitted that we've changed minds, which means it's not an exercise in futility, right?
Come on, baby.
Not for 5% of the people that you talk to.
And those people don't
No. That's a number that you pulled out of your ass. You have no idea how many people have been impacted. You have no idea. And even if it was just 5%, should we stop doing the show because those 5% weren't worth it? Your smug superiority and dismissal of what we do here, you asserted that it's an exercise in futility, and now you've had to agree that it's not.
I'm curious if you have ever believed in anything supernatural.
Supernatural, no.
Nothing. So then why are you?
No,
how do you...
Actually, when I was very, very, very young, because my parents were religious, then the fact of the matter is I had to wake up and smell the coffee, and when I was around about 13, 14, then obviously I looked at the facts and realized that it was incorrect.
So you did change your mind?
But that was because I was too young. I was
I'm not asking you why. I just said, did you change your mind?
Yeah, this is the problem. When we ask questions, we would love for the caller to address them. And every time you fail to address the question, you are exposing what you're afraid to answer. I asked you, how can it be an exercise in futility when you change your mind? Jen is asking you if you changed your mind. And instead of answering yes or no, you tried to give the reason, because you've already made up your mind that this is an exercise in futility, and only a vanishingly small percentage of people are likely to change their mind, and you are superior to them. Well, that's absolutely astonishingly arrogant. Why won't you answer the questions we've asked?
I'm trying, but surely you sometimes feel it's futile to...
No, I don't. Stop
things?
Pretending you can read my fucking mind. You've been wrong at every point in this call.
So maybe you could start with asking if we think it's futile, and I can tell you the fact that we're both here shows that we don't think it is.
Yeah. And the fact that my
Maybe
inbox...
in my mind, sorry.
Yeah, my inbox is full of responses from people who've changed their mind. And so while I fully agree that we're not going to change everybody's mind, I don't know how to tell the difference between a caller whose mind will be changed and a caller whose mind won't be changed. Do you know how to tell the difference?
I don't even know that my goal is to change people's minds, but to just get people to start thinking, just to get people to re-examine their thought process and their own epistemology. That's my goal. So is my futile position that I'm trying to convince everybody to be atheists? Well, that's not even what I'm doing. So.
No, I agree with what you say. When I go and speak to somebody like my parents who are still religious, I just put the cases to them. I can never change their mind. I can only...
Well,
how do you know?
Yes, there are certain people that you will never change their mind. How are you going to tell us which people those are?
I just see sometimes that when there is a debate there that there is frustration there. That's all I would say.
Yeah, it's a pretty emotional subject for a lot of people.
But that's not what you said. You didn't call in and say, wow, I see a lot of frustration and I wanted to talk about that. You called in to specifically say that what we're doing is futile, that we are chasing our tail, and that you wanted to prove it. So how are you going to prove that?
This is where it starts to fall apart for Peter, I'm afraid.
For my question before, when I said that you're looking at any evidence that can be given to, well, even if somebody came up and gave you the most detailed evidence for 2,000 years ago, it would not sustain to now. So it's a case of, it's a written book, and nobody can ever prove any otherwise. And that's why I'm saying there's no evidence that could be put across to you.
I'm not aware of that because I don't know all the evidence. I don't know what evidence somebody has that could prove a God. But you are not a skeptic. You're a cynic. You've decided that no evidence could be put forward that would change the rational person's mind. And you've also decided that it is futile waste of time to try to change the mind or educate people about skepticism. And I couldn't possibly disagree more. And I have a mountain of evidence that shows you're wrong.
I'm a piece of that evidence.
So maybe instead of thinking that you're better than everybody and that you figured this stuff out, but nobody else can, maybe you should just assume that, hey, if I was able to change my mind on things and other people have been able to change their mind on things, maybe educating people about skepticism, critical thinking, and better epistemology is one way to potentially change minds. And look at the Atheist Experience. They've changed many minds. As a matter of fact, many, if not most, of the volunteers working behind the scenes here are people who've changed their minds because of content that's been either here or a Talk Heathen or in a debate, etc. Okay. I understand your frustration, but it sounds like your frustration is worse than ours, because your frustration has driven you to the point where you're like, oh, this is all a waste of time. It's not.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe I've been... Maybe my way of debating isn't as strong as yours. That's maybe the case.
Maybe mine is weaker than yours. But the point is, when you look at like your parents, because I heard you say you're not going to change their mind. I don't think I'm going to be able to change my parents' mind either. And we stopped having the conversation. But that doesn't mean that somebody else couldn't change their mind. Maybe instead of hearing from their son, maybe if they heard from a former pastor that they used to respect, maybe that would do it. I don't know. I don't have any reason to think, because they flatly told me that they are closed-minded and unwilling to consider this. But that doesn't mean that that is forever. Something in their life could change. I'm not holding my breath for it to change. But the fact that you've run into a difficulty and kind of given up doesn't mean we should all give up on everybody.
If you had asked, I'm sure you too, if either one of us, while we believed, if we ever would have changed our mind, we would have said no. Like, that's not something that you can predict if you're in that mindset. It's just something you find out happens if it does.
Yeah.
So.
And I appreciate. I mean, I watch a lot of the debates that are online, and I appreciate the time that you put in. It's not a case of me saying that, you know, I love listening to your show. It's brilliant, and I listen to a lot of the other side as well with Ray Comfort and the other people that and I just think sometimes when I see people like that, you will never. That sort of person will never change. But like you say, you have moved a lot of people from one side to the other. So yeah,
you may be right, but here. You may be right. And so this is a much better way to do this, Peter, than calling in to say, I think you're wrong and wasting your time. Yeah. Here's the thing. I agree there are probably people who will never change their mind. The thing is, how do I tell the difference between one of those people and someone who will change their mind? And how do I do that without at least talking to them? I don't know. So I'm going to talk to all of them and assume that all of them are capable of changing their mind under the right circumstances. I don't think there's very many callers who are going to call in and change their mind in a 10-minute call with Jenna or me. I just don't think that's likely, but maybe over a bunch of calls, maybe over different calls, maybe with somebody else.
Well, you don't know how many episodes of this they've seen before they call in either.
Yeah.
So you could be the last straw.
No,
who knows?
So at a minimum, all we're suggesting, and by the way, we're not making outgoing calls. We're not going door to door saying, you know, hey, have you stopped believing in Jesus yet? We can help. We're letting people call in to us. And I think that increases the likelihood of being effective, because the only people who are really going to call in to try to defend theism are people who are incredibly strongly convinced that they have a good reason. And maybe they do. I don't know yet. It would be a mistake for me to say, everybody who's going to call in today is clearly wrong. I know this ahead of time. That is some bullshit. That's not skepticism. That's cynicism. And so instead, while I'm not incredibly optimistic that we're going to get indisputable proof of God today, I'm open to the possibility. Moreover, though, both of us, both Jenna and I, want to have conversations with people so that we can say, hey, you believe something and I believe something. Let's take a look at the reasons why we believe it, which, by the way, Peter, is exactly what we just did with you. You believed this was futile. We believed it's not. And so we talk about, what are the reasons for this? How do you tell? And in the end, you're like, okay, it's not futile, but here's my frustrations. And my answer is, I share your frustrations. More so, because I've been doing this for 16 years.
That was kind of a
have
good
you ever
ending.
felt that, I mean, like when I saw the actual debate against certain people, have you ever just felt like saying, right, enough's enough, we've gone through, you're not answering the question, and you've not answered the specifics, but you just go over the same thing about the book, and just felt like walking out of a debate?
Yeah.
Have you seen him hang up on people before?
Yeah, I've hung up on plenty of people.
Yeah,
I've never walked out of a debate, but I have in a debate said, okay, I'm done. Let's move on to questions. I have nothing else to say to this person that I'm debating. I've done that at least twice. It may have been worded slightly differently in the other one, but yeah, of course I felt like that.
I don't see.
I'm going to kind of move forward because we're about 1 minute behind, because this is now going nowhere. Forgive me, Peter.
Taking my calling.
Holding your breath. People who were testing for divine healing. I think they're actually communicating with the dead. I can talk to the dead. Jenna can talk to the dead. It's getting the dead to talk back the hard part. Yeah. And I don't know how you demonstrate that. And when we talk about people's personal experiences and stuff, it's kind of difficult. But for 16 years I've been doing this. I don't plan to stop, because how do I know that tomorrow somebody isn't going to call in and say, I prayed to God, Matt, and I followed what you asked. I asked God what I should say to you that he wanted to tell you. And God told me this. And then they spew something out that I've never heard before, that is only explainable as a direct message from God. and all of a sudden I'm like, wow, this God has to be real. Nobody could know this sort of thing. They can tell me, here's what you did. Here's the number that you're thinking of, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
I would love for something like that to happen. It just never happens. Yeah. But we got a bunch of callers, and some of them are willing to offer some stuff. So there's here we go. Nicole in Maryland, welcome to the Atheist Experience. You are on with Jenna and Matt, and you think we're wrong and that Jesus is important. So here's your opportunity to convince us.
Hi, Nicole.
Hi.
So
Okay.
Jesus is important, huh?
Nicole?
Hello?
Hello? Nicole?
Yeah.
Oh, you're on the air.
Go.
You wanna
Go
present
for it,
your
Nicole.
case?
Huh?
Stage
Why
fright.
do you hate
Um,
Jesus?
Well, I thought you had a case to present, which was
I
that
do.
Jesus is important.
Okay.
Do you actually want to have this conversation? You seem
mean-
like you're resentful of being here.
I
Yeah.
couldn't.
I want to know why he hates Jesus so much.
Oh, I don't hate
Why are you
Jesus.
guys
I
such-
don't hate.
No. So, okay. So then, tell me.
I don't think. Okay.
Wow.
I don't hate Jesus because I don't think Jesus exists.
Don't. Okay. And why?
Because there's no
Why?
evidence that Jesus exists. Just now,
That's-
maybe he existed once upon a time, but I don't hate him. I just don't think that he's a
But
divine
don't
creature.
You ever know if he? Right, but he was gone way before we even were here on the planet. So I'm
Mhm.
not understanding how you can even judge a person.
Well, I can only judge what's written in the Bible because
He brings
the
happiness and love throughout your life, and you just sit there and you're a jerk.
You
because
seem to be
you
taking
don't
this
believe
very
You're a jerk.
personally.
exist.
Yeah, okay.
Well,
Well, not very good.
Yeah, I am.
Okay, so not a great intro from Nicole. First of all, she doesn't seem like she wants to be there, and then she's just sort of like almost like passively aggressive. Not great.
Okay,
May I ask why?
yeah. Talk to Jenna because clearly I'm a jerk, and all I want to know
a
is
lot in life, and God has been there for me, and it's just very powerful experiences. It comes from the heart. It's not
So
like things you can say in word. It's just in the heart and how it makes you feel.
okay,
Is
so
all
I
I'm
can
saying.
understand that this
Right.
Jesus idea of
Okay, yeah.
Jesus or evidence of Jesus or this
Yeah.
this brought you
Okay.
some solace, right? Some peace, some
I wouldn't be
Okay.
here without him, sure.
Okay, so what if I were to tell you that may not have been, what if it wasn't Jesus? What if it was you? What if it was a combination
You know
of
what? I agree with you because I don't.
Well, I'm not
know
hold on, I'm not making any
maybe
statements. I'm literally just asking.
No.
Well, no. Hold on. You're gonna
Nicole
mute
needs
for
to
just
shut
a
up and
second.
listen a bit.
What I'm saying is I'm not trying to tell you anything. I'm trying to get you. Oh, did she just hang up?
no, it's muted.
Okay. I'm just trying to get you to consider the possibility that it might be something else. I'm not saying that it is. I'm not telling you that in any way. All I'm asking is for you to just consider for a second that it may have been something else. And if it was, I just want to know your perspective on that. That's all. Oh, so sorry, you're unmuted. Trying to unmute you. Sorry. Okay.
I don't know. I would like to know what that would be like.
Well, so can I make some suggestions of
So,
possibilities?
Yeah, please.
Okay.
Yes.
So
Because
I used to
I
think that
don't-
Jesus.
Oh, shut up,
I used to
Nicole.
think that
Listen.
Jesus was doing the same things for me. For my whole life, I thought that Jesus was there to protect me and to hold me, and that he was what was getting me through the hard times that I was experiencing. But then after just a bit of time and a bit of exposure to just different ideas, I came to the conclusion, and you don't have to come to this conclusion, I came to the conclusion that it was myself that got me through that. And so that's just one possibility. What if that was true? What if it was you that got you through your hard time and that it was you that was comforting yourself? What if? That's all I'm asking.
I do. I agree.
Okay.
I do.
So what I wonder, Nicole, though, is
like Yeah.
Nicole, I wonder, are you familiar with Dumbo and Dumbo's magic feather?
Yes.
Yeah, so they gave Dumbo this magic feather, except there was no magic in the feather.
Yeah.
The magic was in Dumbo the whole time. So how do we tell the difference between how can you or I tell the difference between whether Jesus is helping you or whether you are helping you and crediting Jesus? How do we tell the difference?
I don't know. And
I don't either, but you're the one.
I'm not saying you're
Nicole,
wrong.
Nicole,
Right? I'm just saying I'm halfway.
Nicole, what I'm saying is you called in to ask why I'm mad at Jesus, why I hate Jesus. And now you're saying that you don't know how to tell the difference between whether you're helping you or whether Jesus is helping you. But you called in and seemed to be convinced that it was Jesus that helping you and that we're just dense for not recognizing this. And now we've gotten to the point, and this is wonderful, that where we agree. I don't know how to tell the difference between Jesus helping you and you helping you crediting Jesus. But at a minimum, can you see why I don't have a reason to believe in Jesus?
Are you done?
Are you going to answer
asked
this
a question.
I mean, like I said, it's either A or B. I'm trying to find that out. The title was to tell you, like, why do you hate Jesus? Because that's what I've heard about this show is you guys don't believe
stop going with what you've heard.
Yeah.
Stop going with what you've heard
I don't know
about this. Stop, Nicole, listen. Listen,
okay?
Nicole, listen.
I'm listening.
No, you're not. You're talking. When you listen, your mouth is closed. If you are listening to what people have said about the show rather than judging it for yourself, that's a mistake. And if you're listening to what people say about Jesus instead of judging it for yourself based on evidence, that's a mistake. But if you recognize that you can't tell the difference between you helping yourself or Jesus helping you, then you at least should also be able to recognize that Jenna and I can't tell the difference between Jesus helping you and you helping you. I have no evidence of anything in your life at all. And so if our position is just, hey, I don't believe that there's a Jesus who's actually doing anything to help you, what is the evidence for it? And your response is, I can't present any evidence. I can't even make this decision myself. All I'm asking is, do you understand why we wouldn't have a reason to believe?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, that's it.
Hey, that's really cool of you, to be honest. I really appreciate that.
I mean, I do apologize. I'm just trying to let it out there.
Whoa, okay, game on, Nicole.
All of these conversations are potentially contentious because this is important to you. This is about who you are.
Me too.
Cool. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So would you like to evaluate how we can know things like that? Because I came to that same point in my journey. I came to discover I didn't know whether to go ahead.
Nope.
So yeah, I came to the same point in my journey where I discovered that I didn't know how to tell if it was reasonable to believe that I did something or whether Jesus was doing it. So Matt happens to be a really good guy at helping people evaluate their logic. Do you want to start into that?
Yeah. It's because, like I said, I'm halfway. I mean, you can believe in God and you can be X, Y, Z, like whatever. And it's like, you know, I could drive home from work and get in a car crash, or this could happen. And we don't know if God was the one to stop that, or if whoever is there to stop that. It's just, we don't know if it actually exists.
Yeah.
You guys do have a valid point.
So the thing is,
I mean,
if we don't know,
you do.
if we don't know, then I can't believe something unless I have a good reason for it. Now, granted, I don't know if you know this because I don't know if you know this, Nicole, but because you heard about this from the show, I was a fundamentalist Christian, Southern Baptist, walked down the aisle at the age of 5 at a revival, accepted Jesus into my heart, was active in the church, led youth group stuff, was studying with the intention of being a minister when I found my way out of this, when I found out I didn't have a good reason to believe any of this. And for 16 years now, I've been hosting this show, asking people regularly, tell me what you believe and why, present the evidence for your belief.
Mm-hmm.
And in the entire time of that show, and in the entire history of the world, no one has ever been able to demonstrate an evidence-based case that there is a God, or that there's anything supernatural, or that the supernatural is in any way impacting the life we have. I understand that people believe it, and I kind of understand why many people believe it. First of all, it is terrifying to admit you don't know something. It is also terrifying to think, gosh, what's going to happen to me after I die? I don't know. And these religions say I should be this. But if that's the case, how do you pick which religion to follow? Do you seek the best heaven, or do you try to avoid the best hell? Wouldn't it be better to say,
The worst.
I can't pick a religious belief because none of them have met their burden of proof. And if there is a God that's going to punish me or reward me after death, why not begin with the assumption that he's going to punish or reward me based on an honest intellectual pursuit of the truth, rather than believing whatever somebody told me because I'm afraid? Why would God want you to be afraid?
You know what? What you just said was perfect. And you were absolutely right. I'm just like blown away because like, I mean, God is good, but like, we don't know. How are we supposed to know?
Yeah, and
So,
not to blow your mind
that
completely.
was a great example. Yeah.
I should shut up now, Nicole, but I'm going to try and blow your mind one more time, and that's this: if you
No.
if you bought into the Christian
I'm
God
sorry
at
if
all,
I'm like you guys, it's cool.
no, if you bought into the Christian God, like many of us, like me, like
Okay.
Jenna and everybody else, I believed God was the good one and
Right.
Satan was the evil one, right?
Right.
How did you decide which one was good and which one was evil? Because if God wrote on your heart that he's the good one, then you're going to believe he's good, whether he's evil or not. And if you look at the book, who kills more people? Who does more ridiculous stuff? And in my mind, it's just a lot easier to look at the book and go, this is the mistaken thoughts of men. There's nothing behind this. There's not a good God. There's not an evil God. This is man's attempt to control human behavior, to fill in the gaps in our knowledge, to make it easier to struggle with our mortality and with our fear and with our ignorance. And it did a decent job at some stuff, and it did terrible at other things by sanctioning slavery and misogyny and not allowing women to have property, or forcing rapists to marry their rape victims. There's so many things that are problematic in the books. And if there were a God and the book is immoral and people got the book wrong, why hasn't God shown up to say, that's not me, that's not what I said, that's not what I believe? And since no God has come forward to correct any of this, isn't it more likely that we are fumbling through a universe that happened to produce us and doesn't care about us, and it's up to us to care about us? It's up to us to fix our problems. This is why I'm a secular humanist, because even if there is a God, which I can't demonstrate, there's no reason to think that this God intervenes or cares or does anything on our behalf, which means when Jenna needs a ride to the hospital when she's giving birth, it's on me to do that as her friend if nobody else is available. It's not like she can pray and God's going to miracle her ass to the hospital. Even if she was still a believer, that's not going to happen. And so for me, until there's evidence that there is a God, I can't believe that there is one. But I can live a life based on this notion that people are valuable because we share our lives, and what I do impacts you and what you do impacts me. I want you, Nicole, making rational decisions and working alongside of us to make the world better, whether you believe in a God or not. But I don't know how that can happen.
Well, then let's do it. I'm ready.
All right.
Thank you so much. That
Thank
was
you, Nicole.
awesome.
Well done, Nicole.
You're
Big
great.
time.
Thank
Big
you so
time.
much.
Thank you,
I'm
Nicole.
glad
That doesn't
you
happen very
called.
often.
Guys.
And she
Have
called
a
him a
great
jerk.
Bye.
Right.
Thank you. You too.
Well,
Have
that
a
went
great
much
Sunday for everybody.
that went
do
much
it.
differently than it sounded like it was going to at the beginning. I'm very, very happy.
Yeah, and you know what is confusing, or what I particularly enjoy, is that I know that Peter in the UK is watching that and just witnessed something that almost never happens.
Right? That's very
That
true.
he said was futile. Take
Oh
that,
my
put
God.
that in your pipe and smoke
Oh,
it,
if
Peter.
there wasn't
Wow,
a sign
another
for
British
Peter
phrase.
Pan, there is now.
Ah, that's so good. I don't care what happens the rest of the day. Oh, it's nice.
Oh my God. Okay, who are we going to next? You know how to pick them today.
Alejandro in California, thank you so much for waiting. You're on with Jenna and Matt. How are you?
Hey, Hey, Matt, how you doing today?
Doing well. Exceptionally well, evidently.
Excellent. Excellent. Now, I want to make sure I don't straw man your position, so I just want to make sure that you're defining atheism as a lack of belief. You are specifically not claiming that God does not exist.
Oh, gosh. Okay, look, that is so not what atheism is. Why is it that people cannot get this definition right? Why is it that when this comes up, every time it comes up, they always get it wrong? Why? For goodness sake. But I will let Matt explain it, because he clearly will.
Specifically not claiming that God does not exist, and you are not claiming that God does exist. I got that right?
It depends on the definition of a God, but the overall position for me is that I am not convinced that a God exists, and yes, in fact, I hold that should be the default position.
Okay. Well, the problem is, because we're not saying God does not exist and we're not saying that God does exist, that's basically just your opinion. And there's no
it's not.
It can be the default.
No, it's not. This is a foundational issue. So here's the thing. Let me use
This is an issue of evidence.
Rights as an example. Okay? Either we begin with you have all rights and freedoms except for the ones we limit, or we begin with you only have the rights and freedoms that we specifically codify, right? Those are the two primary options of protecting rights. I'm asking for assent.
I'm really trying to follow it, but near as I can tell, it's one of those things where either rights are ordained by God or they're human constructs.
No. God is irrelevant to this. I'm getting ready to do a video next week on God-given rights. There are no rights that are guaranteed by God. There's no demonstration that there is a God to guarantee rights, and rights that you think are granted by God are irrelevant. The only rights that matter are what we as individuals codify and protect. And when we do that, we either begin with you have all rights and freedoms, and then we restrict and limit those based on need, or you have no rights and freedoms until we expressly grant them. That's the way granting rights in society works. And so we should begin.
Presupposing atheism. You're presupposing atheism.
Alejandro, I'm not presupposing atheism. I'm describing rights.
Okay, well, you
I'm describing
that God, the God hypothesis. You just toss that out the window, and
yes, that's not presupposing. Alejandro, please stop. Please stop. Please stop accusing me of doing something I didn't. I'm sorry that you don't understand this. I'm trying to explain it to you. We as a society are going to protect rights of individuals. It doesn't matter where you think rights come from. It doesn't matter if you think God wants you to have a right. We as a society are going to grant people rights that we protect. And we do that in one of two ways. You either grant all rights and then restrict things as need be, or you grant no rights and only grant the rights that we codify. Those are the two primary options. That's it. I'm not saying it has no. It doesn't make.
You're still.
Alejandro, I am making no declaration about whether or not there is a God. This has nothing to do with theism and atheism. This is about rights. Please stop accusing me of something I didn't just because you can't get off your fucking script.
Okay is the answer.
If somebody says to you, the Loch Ness Monster is a real being, okay? Are you still there?
Okay.
Now, what is the default position? Do you begin by believing it, or do you begin by not believing it and you have to become convinced?
Well, here's the thing.
That's a simple question. That's a simple question. I'm gonna let you speak. I may not let you speak. I'm gonna let you speak, but I asked a simple question. Either you begin by believing it the instant you are presented with the claim, or you don't believe it until you become convinced. Which of those is the case?
They are absolutely equal.
They're not.
No, they're fucking not. That's boneheadedly stupid.
Is that an
When you
honest
are
answer?
presented with a claim, if I tell you there are fairies that live in my garden, do you begin by believing it the instant the claim is made, or do you begin by saying, I do not believe there are fairies in your garden until you convince me?
Well, he made the claim that they're equal.
About fairies, so I would say no. I have reasons not to believe in fairies.
That's not the question. Why won't you address the question honestly? If I tell you,
Well,
no, I'm not, Alejandro. You are interrupting and accusing me of things it's not. So here we're going to make this really fucking easy. If I tell you there's a Fergalburgle in my garage, do you believe me?
What's a Fergalburgle?
Do you believe me?
Matt,
Do you believe me?
To not believe.
Do you believe me?
I just said that. I have good reasons.
Do you believe
I
me?
have good reasons.
Do you believe
not
me?
to believe. I don't
Do
believe
you believe me that there's a
He says no.
Fergalburgle
He's saying
in
no.
my garage?
He's saying no.
I want a yes or no. Do you
I
believe
told
me?
you, I have good reasons not to believe you.
I
have
want
good
a
reasons
yes
not to
or a
believe
no,
you.
jackass. Do you believe me when I say it? Why won't you answer the question?
I've answered it several times.
No, you haven't. I want a yes or a no.
I even said I
Do-
answered it.
Do
So
you
you're saying no?
believe? I'm going to ask you one more time. I'm going to ask you one more time, Alejandro. I'm going to ask you one more fucking time a yes or no question. And if you don't say yes or no, you're done. If I say there's a Fergalburgle in my garage, do you believe me?
No,
Okay, thank you. Why was that so hard?
because I have good reasons not to believe you.
No, you don't. You don't even know what a Fergalburgle is. You don't have good reasons not to believe me. Your default position is that
That's
you
one of the
are
reasons.
not no. You are not convinced that it's true.
So what if
Because I have
Fergalburgle is
good
the name of
reasons.
his car?
No, you don't. You don't even know what the fuck it is.
There you
That's
go.
the point.
No. So what
That's
if
not
a Fergalburgle?
No. Stop. The fact that you don't know what something is doesn't mean you have good reason not to believe it. That is a fallacy. This shit is really easy, Alejandro, if you stop putting your baggage in front of it and just answer the question.
Okay, so what if your car is named Fergalburgle? Okay, now I believe you.
So
You're an idiot. Bye.
So it depends on
Yeah,
whether
get rid
you
of him.
understand
He
it,
is
determines
actually,
whether or not
Matt is right, he's an
that's true.
idiot.
So
blinded
you have to understand
idiot.
what a God is before you can believe that
please
it's
get
true.
rid of
Okay,
him.
well then I still don't understand what a God is.
You're not being honest in this discussion,
Okay,
and
well,
it's been that way from the get-go because you accused me of assuming Goodbye.
Yeah,
You're done. You are done, Alejandro. You don't accuse me. You don't accuse me of assuming atheism. And I tried 3 different times to come up with an analogy that has nothing to do with theism or atheism to get you to recognize the truth, which is when anyone on the planet is presented with a proposition, their default position is that they are not convinced. Becoming convinced is a process, and you can become convinced for good reasons or bad reasons. But before you are presented with a proposition, you don't believe it. And when you are presented with it, you either are convinced of it based on evidence or you are not convinced of it. Those are the only 2 options. You're either convinced or you are not, period. And when it comes to the proposition that a God exists, the default position is that you are not convinced until you become convinced. Becoming convinced is a process, and it's done for good reasons and bad reasons. This is as straightforward as you can get. The default position is to not be convinced of something, and then you become convinced. That's it. That's all I'm saying. Does that make sense? Or are you going to accuse me of assuming? Does that make sense? Or are you going to accuse me of assuming atheism again?
Matt, can I get into this now that I've just established what you're saying? All right. Look,
why won't you answer the question that you're asked?
Okay.
Why won't you ask it? Shut up.
And now you're saying.
Shut up. You're on mute. Nobody can hear you but you. Literally nobody can hear you but you. Why won't you answer the question that I ask you? You're unmuted.
The question that you asked me is whether I believe that there is a Fergalburgle in your garage.
No, we moved beyond that question,
Know what a
Alejandro.
Fergalburgle is.
We moved beyond that question.
Now, I'm answering the question.
No, you're not, because that's not the question at hand.
But I know what God is.
No, you don't.
I can make a judgment.
No, you
What do you mean
don't.
I don't. How are you accusing me that I don't know what God is?
How do you know? How do you know what a God is? How do you know what Alejandro?
You know what it is.
Alejandro.
Now you're doing that to me.
Alejandro, no, because you're not fucking listening.
Yeah.
You don't know what God I'm talking about when I say God.
Bingo. And
Yes.
you're saying every single one of them is impossible.
No, I'm not. And
Every
if you
single one.
no, I'm not. No, I'm not. Please stop telling me what I'm saying, because that's not true. I'm not saying that any of them are impossible, except for the ones that are logically impossible, which is required for me to get a demonstration of somebody, a definition of their God. But if I say I believe in a God,
so you're arguing that God is
oh my God,
verifiable.
okay, no, I'm muting you. Now you'll listen, okay? Because we're going to take you to school, Alejandro, until you stop being so smugly fucking superior. I'm saying that if I say I believe in a God, you don't have enough information yet to determine whether or not you're convinced, which means you cannot be convinced. So your default position is you're not convinced that my God exists. You don't know enough about it. So then you would have to ask me, Alejandro, what is my definition of God? And that, by the way, is what we keep trying to do on this show. When somebody calls in and says they believe in a God, I want to know what God, what's their definition of God. At no point have Jenna, Norm, and me said all gods are impossible. Please stop trying to put words in our mouth. At no point in this discussion did I assume the truth of atheism. Please stop trying to put words in my mouth. I'm speaking from a purely philosophical, logical foundation that when you are presented with any claim, whether it's about a God or anything else, you either already accept that claim once you understand what it's defined as, or you are not convinced of that claim. Those are the only two options. You're either convinced or you're not convinced. And my point is that the default position for claims is that you are default not convinced until you become convinced. You can be convinced by really bad reasons. That's all I've said. Is that clear?
Yeah, we're clear.
Okay, cool.
You know, a really good test to see if it's clear is if you can say his position back to him.
Okay. I know what his position is, but after
Which he just told you what it is. So what was it?
Talk about it. His position is the default is not to believe something until you're convinced otherwise.
Yep.
Do you agree with that?
No.
Cool.
Okay. Do you want to explain that? Because I'm curious.
How is it? I'd like to know how the default position could be to believe something before you're convinced.
Right.
That food is poisonous.
What?
Bad food is poisonous.
Or
is poisonous food bad?
I don't know how. My question was, how can you demonstrate that you can believe something before you're convinced? And what came out of your mouth is bad food is poisonous. Okay? Bad food is poisonous. First of all, bad food isn't necessarily poisonous. I've had bad food that wasn't poisonous.
That food.
Okay.
Bad food is poisonous. How can I possibly believe that if I'm not convinced?
Are you going to eat it?
That whether or not I eat it is irrelevant to whether or not I believe it's poison. No,
is very important.
No, Alejandro.
Very
you
important.
said Alejandro.
I can actually eat the food.
I
Get
don't
rid of him.
know,
He's an idiot.
But if you say to me,
sorry,
that
Alejandro,
food is poisonous,
you're an idiot.
I may believe you based on evidence. I may not believe you. And in either case, I still may not eat it. So you are just arguing from fallacy after fallacy. I said, show me how one can believe something when they are not convinced. Because belief is the result of becoming convinced. So show me how it's possible to believe something without being convinced.
The food is poison. I just showed you.
You didn't show me anything. You've made a statement. No, Alejandro, you've made a statement.
Yeah.
I don't believe your statement. I asked you to demonstrate. I asked you to demonstrate. Please stop interrupting me. I asked you to demonstrate how one can believe something when they are not convinced. And you making a statement that food is poisonous is not an argument. It's not evidence. It doesn't convince me of anything. I don't believe it, and I am not convinced. All you're doing is furthering my position that you can't believe something until you're convinced. That belief means you have become convinced.
Okay, so are you going to eat the food that's poisonous?
I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to eat it or not, but Alejandro, is it possible that I don't believe you and that I still wouldn't eat the food?
Well, the thing is, what you're.
Why won't you answer my question? No, I'm muting you again, and I'm going to make you listen to me one more time. Okay? I'm trying to show you logic. I want to know, is it possible that you could say that food is poison and that I may not believe you and I also would not eat the food? Is that possible?
It's possible. And
good. Do you know what that means? Do you know what that means?
You're probably going to get sick and die.
No, it means that your position.
He's an idiot.
Okay, you're not serious. Okay. I'm done with you. You're not serious. You're just sitting there laughing.
No, I don't think he is.
So here's the thing. When you argue with shitty arguments and you get exposed, this is why we want you to answer the question. Because if your position is that one can believe something before they're convinced, and your argument for it is that food is poisonous, are you going to eat it? Well, no, I don't know if I'm going to eat it or not, but that's separate from whether or not I believe you. And that was the point I was trying to make, that it's possible that I wouldn't eat the food because I believe you. It's also possible that I wouldn't eat the food even if I don't believe you. Maybe I don't like that kind of food. You are a sloppy arguer. That's the point.
And I think he's trying to get to Pascal's wager. Am I right? Like he's trying to be like, well, just act like it is because otherwise it's dangerous if you do. And it's like, well, that's not the same thing. That's not.
I honestly don't know. Because he starts off with this,
it was just an idiot.
The default position isn't a lack of belief, because I've never, heard the expression. So like, if somebody came up to me and said, all roller coasters are terrifying, and it's the first time I've ever heard that sentence and been presented with that prospect in a sentence, I may already believe it because I've been on a roller coaster and just never considered that proposition. But as soon as I do, the wealth of information I have shows that, oh, yes, I agree, all roller coasters are terrifying. It would still be a mistake because I haven't been on all roller coasters. Right. And actually, I've been on some that weren't terrifying at all or were pretty boring. But it's possible that I believe something before I've been presented with this particular expression of it. But the truth is, the concept is something I already accepted. I just didn't have words for it. But if you present a concept that I've never been presented, like I've got a Fergalburgle in my garage, well, I cannot possibly say I believe that if I don't know what it is.
Right.
And so we need to dig in on what the definition is. And once the definition is, then the wealth of information I have may say, yes, I believe that. And I've always believed it. I just didn't know what to call it. Mm-hmm. If somebody says, hey, is your religion henotheistic? And I don't know what the word henotheistic means. It may mean, I may believe, we're getting ready to take a call on this, which is why I mentioned it. I may believe already that the religion is henotheistic. I just haven't heard the term. And so I didn't know the term.
So I don't know what that means.
Well, we'll get to that. So, yeah. And that brings us to this call. Joe in Wisconsin, thanks so much for waiting. I appreciate your patience. I'm sorry that last call didn't go as good as the one before it. Hopefully this will be fine. How you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Not as good as earlier, but pretty good.
Yeah, I heard that. You had a good call before.
Yeah.
The question is about how sound of an argument is it when dealing with theists to say that Abraham made it all up. I understand that the theist scholars and historians agree that before Abraham, there was no such thing in the world as a monotheistic God. And if the story, as I understand it, when Abraham was young, his father made idols, and then the dad went away. He broke the idols. Dad came back, said what happened. He said they fought and so on. But if he made it up, how could that possibly be if Adam and Eve and the whole story was true? It just seems like there would be people in the world that would have known about God as being a monotheistic God, and Abraham would not have made it up. It would have already been a known quantity.
Yeah. So it's a good question, and that's why I mentioned henotheism, because basically there's on the theism side of things, we can break theism, the belief in some sort of God, down into a variety of things. There's monotheism, where you believe there is only one God, and then perhaps lesser beings, angels, spirits, but only one God. Then there's polytheism, which is many gods. And so you can have Zeus and Athena and all of these, and they're all supreme in their own domain, their own bailiwick. And so you can have not just a multifaceted or multi versions of a god, but different distinct entities. That's polytheism. Then you have henotheism, which is the notion that there are many different gods, but ours is ours, and ours is the best. And so the best understanding, in my opinion, and don't think this is going to convince too many people in atheism, I think that Judaism is absolutely henotheistic from the get-go. And that while it changes a little bit when we get to Abraham, that really it's not so much saying henotheism is false and there is only one God, that Judaism is saying our God is the supreme God. So when you look at hang on one second. Apologies, but I have a cough button. When you look at Genesis, for example, and you start reading what's in there, it says, you have God, the character, saying, man has become like us. Okay, who's he talking about? We don't know. Then you get to Moses. Moses comes forward, let my people go, and he comes to perform miracles. Well, when the Pharaoh's magicians drop their sticks down on the ground, they become snakes. They did this magic trick, sticks to snakes. And Moses does the same magic trick. It's just that Moses' snake was bigger and ate up all the other ones. Which, by the way, somebody on my YouTube channel said Moses' snake was bigger is a good summary of the entire Old Testament. But that notion there is that, yes, the Pharaoh's magicians had power from other gods, that Baal was a god, that all of these other gods that people were worshiping were real, but you weren't supposed to worship those because El, or Allah, or Elohim, was our God. And then it morphs into something that's closer to monotheism, but then you get to the New Testament with Christianity, and you go back to a version of henotheism. It's just something entirely different. And that's the Trinitarian God, where the three are identical and separate, which isn't possible, and are one and separate. And, it's absurd. So monotheism is the belief that there's only one God. And I don't think Judaism qualifies. I think Christianity barely qualifies. I think Zoroastrianism may in fact be the oldest monotheistic religion, but it's really hard to tell. Does that clear up a bunch of it?
Yes. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thanks, Joe.
Any questions?
Any follow-up questions? Can we help on anything else?
I don't want to take your time. I just would like to thank you for your work and keep it up. Thank you very much.
Wow.
Thank you so much.
Okay, on, Joe.
And Joe was atheist, by the way. I was hoping we were going to get like a correction or him saying, I understand that, but here's my one God. I don't know. All right, how are we doing? Let's go to Michael in, Michigan, is it? You have a proof of God or something. Well, welcome, Michael.
Hey, how are you guys? I think what you do is pretty impressive. So in a lot of different circumstances,
go downhill now.
The problem is that there's a storied and there's a rich tradition of theism within the history of Western philosophy that's largely ignored and largely not looked at from the skeptical perspective in traditional atheism. For example, the German idealists had astonishing, wonderful, dense, and rich conceptions of God. You have Fichte, you have Schelling.
This has to do with math?
Schopenhauer, who had excuse me?
I'm sorry, I'm just confused about your...
I'm giving some pretext to the conversation.
Oh, we know how Matt loves pretext.
No. And by the way, Michael, I have no problem with you addressing this. I just want to say that, I've heard this sort of thing from other people, and I don't mean to be insulting or dismissive, but looking back at 18th century theistic philosophers like Fichte, whose name I'm never going to pronounce properly because my German sucks, but Fichte. I don't find it to be I don't think that a robust God concept is relevant or impressive at all. What I care about is evidence for the proposition. And even with someone like Fichte, who is kind of cribbing a little bit from Kant and kind of spinning off of that.
Sure, right.
When you start doing that, it's like they're looking, like even Fichte thinks that even his mathematical things where he's trying to show the structure and order in the universe to get there, he doesn't view that as a true justification for God. He viewed it as a seed, that's a seed to be planted for God to grow. Yeah.
Right. So that there's something to that. So let's back up here for a split second. I'm a philosopher. We'll have.
And I'm not. I'm a duffer.
No. That's okay. I'm going to be down in Austin doing a lecture sometime in like maybe October. If you want, you and I could get together and we'll smoke some DMT together, and we'll see whether or not that changes your mind.
Well, hang on.
I guarantee.
On DMT, you think?
I guarantee that will blow your mind.
Hang on. I want to address this really quick. Michael, hang on.
Sure.
When you come down, message me. I'm happy to hang out. I'm not going to talk about whether or not you and I will do illegal drugs on this program or not. I can also say that I have zero interest. Now, don't get me wrong. I've done hallucinogenics before. I have no objection to drugs. I'd like to legalize almost everything. I don't think that DMT is a way to discover the truth. I'm convinced you can blow my mind and make me think of all kinds of things, but I don't think that is proof of a God.
Hold on. Look, I love you dearly. DMT is not. Trust me. When you take it and you find that you're seeing in the form of a sphere in every which direction possible, and you're seeing colors that your brain didn't even evolve to process, the argument gets real weird.
Is DMT why you're convinced there's a God?
No. I'm convinced for philosophical reasons that give me just cause and give me just cause to move to conclusions inferential. Let me go ahead and let me just give you some context.
Hang on.
Sure.
Would you also agree that a brain that's being altered by a chemical substance can produce all sorts of things, and that you cannot draw a connection between what you experienced while high and the truth?
Absolutely not. And absolutely not. I would say that because here's where my worldview gets weird. I don't believe in the existence of brains. So
that is a weird worldview.
You're going to get into some real weird.
Have you never seen a brain? Because I have.
No, I understand, but I don't think. All right, my worldview is the weirdest worldview you'll probably ever stumble across. I'm an apocalyptic idealist.
I tell you what, Michael. I'm going to shut up in just a second. I'm going to shut up and get you just a second and let you run off. But I'll tell you right now, you will never be the one who picks what drugs I take, ever.
No. True. Oh, I get it. Okay, sorry. I'm a little excited about talking about you. But here's the thing. Let's start off with Kant, so I can name the foundation, so we can move to Fichte.
Okay.
So Kant made the observation that he said certain fundamental beliefs were actually essential in order for us to process empirical experience. And he said we can't conceive of a dog independent of a priori concepts of space and time. Because if you get rid of your a priori concept of space, the dog loses its structure and it collapses and becomes meaningless to identify it geometrically. And then if you get rid of the actual a priori structure of time, the dog can't bark, the dog can't shit, the dog can't do anything which is pertinent to the behavior of dogs. So Kant made the observation that in order for us to process anything at all, in order for us to experience anything first, there needed to be some a priori structure preloaded into the psyche. Otherwise, we can't even break down or subdivide the phenomenological aurora of our psyches into units and components.
You got like one more minute.
Concept that once. Okay. So what this basically means is that outside of our mind, there can be no space and time. It collapses, and once you get outside of the mind. So once you get outside of the mind, matter itself is no longer possible, because matter is only a consequence of our abstracting from our consciousness, meaning taking away all the empirical features of what we observe and leaving only the pure abstractions as to what remained there. So the material universe completely collapses into an idealistic reality according to Kant.
Okay, so I'm going to pause you here.
The existence of matter independent of consciousness. Yeah,
I'm going to pause you here because. No. Now we're not getting into anything. I'm going to pause you here because I don't view space-time as an a priori, but an a posteriori thing. And I don't agree with your notion that there could be anything outside the mind if you believe in a mind without a brain, and that's a problem. So what we really need to do is not take this as a call that is going to confuse many people who have not dug into this, and I haven't dug into this as deeply as you have. I would rather that you email tv@atheist-community.org, as anybody else can, and you and I can have a discussion. Or when you come down for your lecture, let me know, and I will attend your lecture. But I'm not going to let you keep going, just spouting off a whole bunch of Kantian stuff that I reject and don't have the time to teach everybody about.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I reject it too.
Fair enough. Could I make one sentence real quick? I'll give Fichte's argument then. I'll just cut
Oh,
that.
don't.
Absolutely, and I greatly appreciate your acquiescence to this.
So
Go ahead.
Fichte said there's the law of identity. A is A.
Yes.
But he said that in order for A to equal A and not be a meaningless tautology, it must be saying something, which means that A equals A means that A must somehow be disidentical with itself. There must be something in A that is also B. Now, he said once you actually get to something that is A that is also B, the only place it could exist is in the relationship from the concept of A to the actual fact of A.
Yeah, and I reject all of that because the law of identity isn't contingent upon any mind. Something is what it is.
No. This is what he said.
I don't care what he said. I'm telling you what I think of. I'm telling you what I think of what he said.
Okay.
Go
ahead.
If his assertion,
I'll give his counter argument.
if his assertion is that something must also be disidentical with himself, he is now stating a contradiction. And my point is that all that's meant by the law of identity is something is what it is. And our understanding of what it is completely separate from that. If every mind left the universe, a rock still is whatever it is. And a fish still is whatever it is, assuming that it doesn't have a mind, since we remove the minds. Fichte is confusing the map for the place when he tries to expand A equals A to A equals A and A equals something more than A. That is my response to Fichte. And if you want to go over it in October, we can do that.
That's a straw man of his position. Here's his counter argument to that because he already hasn't prepared.
I'm not. You're not listening. No, I'm not holding on. As I said, we're done and moving on. And if you want to discuss this more in October, I will. But I'm not going to keep boring the audience with this when it's something that I reject or rebut it. You can submit something else. Thank you.
Okay. How about this?
Bye-bye, Michael, for goodness sake.
Next caller.
What I heard was there's a Fergal in his garage.
Exactly. And this is one of those things. I know that I would have a good time having a conversation with Michael. I know the majority of the people watching the show would not enjoy that conversation. Some of them will. Some people are mad that I stopped that. Some of them are theists who think that Michael was working towards a nuanced understanding of the world that leads to the proof of a God. And some of them are atheists who are like, no, we finally got to something philosophical. And the problem is, I am on a call-in show with a bunch of other people in the queue whose time I want to respect. And we're now talking about a series of concepts that I'm going to be charitable and say that 1% of the population might understand. And that doesn't make for a good show. And I love those conversations, Michael. I'm happy, as I said, I'm happy to have them with you in October. And I have philosophical friends that are going to show up, but that's not what this is.
But yeah, when you listen to debate, something that I learned the hard way is that if you want to learn about one topic, you got to have hours. You got to have hours and hours.
We have calls, and Sean in Florida has a question for you, Jenna. Go ahead, Sean. Welcome to the show. Thank you for waiting.
All right.
Hey, Matt, I'm a big fan of the show. I've watched it for a couple years now, but I just had a quick question for you guys. Do you disagree with the statement? There's at least a 50% chance that the universe was created by an intelligent designer.
Yes, I disagree with that. Jenna?
50% chance? Yeah, no.
So,
Is that it?
all right, basically I see that there's two possibilities. Either the universe was created by random forces or there is an intelligent designer.
What if there's more possibilities than that?
Okay, well, a frankly ridiculous argument. Okay, let me give another one. I take a pack of cards and I say that I'm going to take a card out, and when I take the card out, it's going to be the Ace of Spades. Okay, Well, that's my assertion. That I'm going to take a card out, and it's going to be the Ace of Spades. Okay, so because there's two options here, it is the Ace of Spades, or it isn't the Ace of Spades. That does not mean that the probabilities are 50-50 because there's two. Just because there's two options in the way that I've presented that does not mean that those options are equally probable. Okay, I'll restart. I don't know why it's not restarted. There you go.
By random
With that, Jenna?
50% chance? Yeah, no.
So, all right, basically I see that there's two possibilities. Either the universe was created by random forces, or there is an intelligent designer.
What if there's more possibilities than that?
It's really easy. I would agree that either universe, we'll just say reality, is the result of an intelligent creator, or it's not. I agree that those are the only two possibilities.
Okay.
I don't know how you could possibly determine that there's a 50-50 chance on those, because I'm either a multi-billionaire or I'm not, but the odds of those things are not equal.
No, I would agree with you with that. I don't believe there's a 50-50 chance. I believe there is a 99.999% chance that there is a creator.
Okay.
Okay, let's talk about that.
Yeah. You're convinced no, hang on. You're more convinced that there's a creator than I am that I exist. So please defend that proposition.
Oh, I didn't say you don't exist, right?
No. I didn't. Oh my God, Sean, it's like people don't listen. I said you are more convinced that there's a creator than I am convinced that I even exist. So when you say you're 99.9% sure there's a God, make your case, because we're not convinced that you can put a number on it at all, let alone 50%, 80%, 20%, and you're saying 99. So prove it.
But you've just taken a position that it's less than.
No. You don't listen.
Why do they just not listen?
I don't think you can put a number on it. You asked me, do I agree with the statement? And then you did a statement with a number on it. And I said no, because I don't think that you can quantify it.
No, I'm sorry, Matt. I didn't ask you if you agreed. I asked you if you disagreed.
No, you asked me if I agreed, because I said no.
Well, no, we have the power to do that. So if you asked me
if I disagreed with as anybody else can, and you and I can have a discussion. A contradiction. Do you think that for you, Jenna? Go ahead. Is the reason calls, and Sean in Florida has a question for you, Jenna.
Forward.
Go ahead, Sean. Welcome to the show. Thank you for waiting.
All right.
Hey, Matt. I'm a big fan of the show. I've watched
come on, Sean. Let's get on with it.
I just had a quick question for you guys.
Here we go.
Do you disagree with the statement? There's at least a 50% chance that the universe was created by an intelligent designer.
Okay, so he said, do you disagree? And the answer is yes.
No. And I said no, because I don't think that you can quantify it.
No, I'm sorry, Matt. I didn't ask you if you agreed. I asked you if you disagreed.
Yes, if you disagree.
No, you asked me if I agreed, because I said no. And so if you'd asked me if I disagreed with the statement, I would have said yes, I disagree with it. Because you gave a quantity,
not really
and I don't see the justification for that quantity. So now justify it.
No, but I'm asking, sorry, Matt, I'm asking, do you disagree with that statement?
What's the statement? Start all over. Tell me the statement, and then ask me if I agree or if I disagree, whatever you want. One more time.
Do you disagree with the statement? There's at least a 50%
Yes.
chance that
Yes, I disagree. Yes, I disagree with that statement.
So you're saying it's more likely than not than the universe?
No, I'm not. I'm saying I disagree with that statement where you have put a quantity on something. I didn't say that I think the number should be higher or lower. I don't know how you can. No, shut the fuck up for a second. I did not say that the number should be higher or lower. I did not estimate a probability. My rejection of the statement is that I'm not convinced that your statement, which includes a stated probability, is justified. That's it. I don't know if it's higher or lower.
Well, that's what I'm asking. I'm trying to get you to take a position, and you won't take that position. You see, this is a problem I have with thinking.
Why are you trying to get us to take a position?
Because that's the problem. You can't pin you guys down, so you don't have. The atheist position is we don't have to defend anything.
Correct.
Right? Yes or no?
Correct. I'm not asserting that there is a God. You are telling us that you are 99.999% convinced, and I'm asking you for the last time to defend that position. I'm sorry that you can't pin me down by sticking a number in when my position is, I don't know how you put a number on it, but I'm the one that's being reasonable here, and you're the one that's asserting you can put a probability on God, and I'm asking you to defend it, or we're moving on.
I'm not, I didn't mean to put I'm just saying what I believe. I can't.
No, you're not.
No,
Trying
you're
to tell us
not.
what we believe.
You asked a question to find out whether or not I agreed or disagree with it. You were trying to box us in on agreeing to a percentage, and I think I don't see how you can put a percentage on it. Would you like to start over?
But I'll try. Am I irrational to believe that the universe has a designer?
I don't know. You haven't presented a case for why you believe that the universe has a designer.
Why are you've admitted that you're trying to pin us down. Why are you trying to pin anybody down?
Because a theist takes a position, the atheist will not take a position.
No, my position is that I'm not convinced of yours. That's the position. I am not convinced of your theistic assertions. Are you going to defend them, or are you just going to whine about how I'm so rational that I haven't bought into bullshit?
No, I'm just trying to, because you guys aren't making a claim about objective reality.
You're trying to do what?
I'm addressing a claim that you're making about objective reality. You are claiming that there's a 99.9% probability that a God exists. You're going to keep trying to talk over me? Because I will always win this. Have you not learned that yet?
Okay, go ahead.
You are making a claim that you are convinced there's a creator. I'm not convinced. You are making a claim that the probability of a creator is greater than 50%. I'm not convinced. You are making a claim that you are 99.9% convinced that the probability of a creator. I'm not convinced. My position is that your stated position is one that I'm not convinced of. Are you going to defend your position, or are you just going to keep whining about how all I've said is that I'm not convinced?
I'll try to defend my position.
Good.
Okay. Just let's say this universe that we inhabit was entirely due to random forces, okay?
I'm sorry, one more time?
I'm sorry, just let's say the universe we inhabit was entirely due to random forces. There is no designer.
That is your position?
Okay. No, he wants us to assume that for the sake of argument. He's probably trying to lead to a reducto.
So he's not going to actually represent his position. No. He's going to take a hypothetical position that he thinks we should be taking?
Yeah, I'm agreeing with that. I'm just agreeing that this is a possibility, right? But I would say it's 1 in a trillion, 1 in a gazillion. We don't.
Why don't we talk about what your actual position is?
Because that's not my argument.
But if you represent that position, I think that should be your strongest argument. You're losing this other one. So why don't we try your actual position, and then we can start branching off and try all these hypothetical positions, because we are not holding this position against you until we find out what it actually is.
Can I just try to make the argument in a minute?
Is this a position you take?
No.
Yes.
Oh.
Then I want to hear that. Yeah.
I don't think.
Okay. Well, inevitably, any civilization will reach a point where it will create language. It could create a wheel. Say the wheel's been invented in different parts of the world multiple times. Would you agree with that?
That's what you want to call it to prove to us?
No, but...
Then what do you want to call and prove to us? What is your point that you're calling to make?
All right, here's my point. Inevitably, there's a more than 0% probability that our civilization will become so technologically advanced that it could create a planet, a moon, a sun, a solar system universe.
Rubbish.
Why couldn't we be living in a universe that was created by an intelligent designer from another universe? That's my question.
Did either of us say that we couldn't?
That was rubbish. Absolute rubbish. Let's just listen to that once more.
You just ask what
a person could create. Here's my point.
Here's
my point. inevitably there's a more than 0% probability that our civilization will become so technologically advanced that it could create a planet.
Right. That our society could be so technologically advanced that it could create, and he goes on to say, a universe. Not really. There is no evidence that our society can create a universe. That the probability that our advancement would allow us to create a universe is an unquantifiable statement. Absolute rubbish.
A moon, a sun, a solar system universe. Why couldn't we be living in a universe that was created by an intelligent designer from another universe? That's my question.
Did either of us say that we couldn't? You just asked why couldn't we be living in that, and neither of us have said that we couldn't. We've asked you to defend your belief that we are, and you haven't done that. I'm going to move on, Sean, because you're just embarrassing yourself at this point because you're not defending your position. Instead, you're asking once again. You're asking us to prove that a hypothetical from you. Why is it not possible that we could be? No, Sean, stop talking. You're done. Completely done.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for trying, but next time maybe start with like making a point and then trying to prove that rather than assuming things.
Yeah, it's one of those things to say, why is it not possible that we're in this? I don't know if it...
Sure.
You've been on hold for a long time. I greatly appreciate that. You had a question for Jenna and me, and I want to make sure we get to it, so thank you.
Sure. Thank you, guys.
Hello.
Okay, I'm super nervous, but let's try to get through this. My question is, what is a Fergal burgle and does it have a brain? Okay.
I am banned. I am prohibited from explaining Fergal burgle to people. I've been sworn to secrecy by the Illuminati.
Oh no!
You just have to take his word for it.
Okay. Cool. Okay, I've been an atheist most of my life. My dad is an atheist. My mom isn't really very religious. But I think the thing about me is I've always really questioned things. My family always jokes about how everything I say turns into a debate because I question, like, okay, why and why and why. And I guess I've grown kind of annoyed by people who don't really question that, especially when it comes to religion, because I do see that as a pretty harmful thing in most ways, like, you know, all the things that come from religion. And I'm not necessarily talking about people who are, you know, diehard religious, more like those people who are just very, like, casual and, you know, just, oh yeah, I believe in this. And I don't know, I guess just how, like, because I have friends who are like that, and I don't want to sound like superior or arrogant, but a lot of times I find myself kind of like not really respecting that and wondering why people don't question that more and why they're so, I don't know. Does that make any sense? I'm trying to like
totally.
fix it and away them.
Yeah.
Sorry. Did you? Okay, cool.
No, that makes perfect sense. Can you tell me why it bothers you?
Yeah, I guess like being this person who likes to just research what I believe in. Yeah, that's a hard question to answer. Just it annoys me, I guess, because like I said, I think a lot of harm comes from religion, and it annoys me when people are just so, I understand when people are, like I said, kind of diehard religious because they come from, I don't know, like everyone's background is different, but for people who are just so, I'm trying to think of the right word, but casual about that, and
yeah,
I guess just like the way to deal with those people, and just, because, you know, I don't want to, for people who are like that, it's just hard to have a conversation where it doesn't end with like, okay, why don't you just like research more about that, or just, I'm sorry, I'm nervous. I'm trying to
You're fine.
phrase it in a
I think it probably gets more nerve wracking when we let you keep talking instead of, but it's
Right.
like, so don't get me wrong. I have no problem respecting individuals and their right to believe things, but I definitely have a problem respecting what individuals say and do and what they believe. Like if you say you believe that there is a God, I don't respect that belief. I respect your right to hold it. And I share your frustration with people who don't take this stuff seriously enough to actually investigate.
I'm just going to get a drink.
But that's partly because it's how I was raised. If in fact there is a God, it's the single most important question anybody could address. Is there an afterlife? What kind of afterlife? How do I get there? What do I need to do? And these are all hugely important questions. But what I will tell you is that the thing that used to irritate me, which is irritating you, I know how I got over it. And that was when I met someone who said that they had been an atheist since around the age of 10 or 11, when somebody first sent them to church, and it just didn't make sense to them. Now, it's silly for me to say that all of the time they spent not thinking about religion is somehow a failing of theirs, if it just didn't make sense to them and they found that it was absurd on its face. Matter of fact, they could argue, why the hell did it take me so long? I was in it from the time I was 5 till I was, early around 30. Why am I so slow that it took me that much time to figure it out? What's wrong with me? And so I realized that because people have different interests, you like to research. I have a friend who likes to research. I like to research some. I like to research things that I'm interested in. It's not just as simple as, hey, I don't like the ice cream you like, because this is an important question to some extent. But I have to say that the 10-year-old who took a look at all this and said, well, this is clearly some bullshit. Why would I want them to spend any more time on it than that? If they got there.
Well, and that's actually kind of the point I was going to make, was that, just if you did find out the reason that it bothers you so much, and it, like you started off with, well, I like to research. Well, it's like right there. What if that person doesn't like to research? And if you say you see the harm, what if that person literally hasn't been exposed to the idea that it could be harmful? What if they had only been exposed to people who all believed that it was absolutely necessary to like just to get by? That's what I kind of try to do, is when I try to understand why somebody does something or believes something, I just try to consider, well, maybe they don't have the reasons that I have yet. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. I think, I agree with everything you guys said. It's just like, for example, I lived in New York for a few years, and mostly being in New York, you're around people who have a lot of access to information and to, all those things that will probably lead them to these kinds of answers. But I also, I don't know, it's hard sometimes to just know, because, it's what both of you said, like, it's kind of one of the most important questions you could ask ever about the world and life. And I think sometimes I find myself in the situation where I'm like, I don't want to be pushy, but at the same time, I want to just rant to this person about, like, why do you believe this, and it's kind of annoying sometimes to be around people who just, like, don't want to question that and don't want to think about that. But
well, and I was actually one of those people, because I was basically born under the impression that I was lucky to be born in the right religion, right? Like, I saved all that time. All these other people have to question and figure this stuff out, but I was lucky I was born into the right one, so I don't have to think about that. I can just go ahead and start here and then just keep growing. So that's what I was exposed to.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add, Manuela, but I've got one more call I want to try and move to, but hopefully that was helpful, and that I feel your frustration, and part of it is that you're frustrated by the same thing that I'm frustrated by, which is that how the hell do I keep waking up in a world where so many people don't give a damn and don't pay attention to this stuff? And why won't they just care as much as I do about this thing that I care about? Can't they see how important it is? And I share that frustration, and it will continue until we're dead. But maybe that means that you find your passion and do that, and address this with the people who do care, like I have.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I don't want to take too much time.
Thanks.
Could I tell a tiny story really quickly? Because I feel like you guys would understand why it's funny. But
go ahead.
Like, even though I'm an atheist, I did do First Communion. I think that's what it's called in English. But and I remember one of the guys who did it with me choked on the bread at the moment, and I always thought that was so funny because it was like Jesus was rejecting him or something. And I guess
I'm allergic to Jesus.
Sure, that was weird.
Oh, that was actually something in
it
my
was always
church.
so
We
funny.
had people who had celiac, and they actually were allergic, and that confused the hell out of me.
Yeah. But somebody actually asked about this on Twitter this morning, because we were joking about it, and they're like, if the Eucharist turns into Jesus, how could anybody, have any sort of bad reaction to it? And I was like, because they are sinners who cannot handle the purity of the Lord once that cracker turns into the Jesus. But that required me to put on my Christian hat.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the call. We're going to move on to the final call for today.
Yeah. Go ahead. Cool.
Cheers.
Thank you so much for talking to me. I'm a big fan.
Okay, Manuel, it was fantastic.
It dropped right there I'm a big fan. And the last caller for today, Leafwater, how are you? Welcome to the show.
Leafwater.
Hello.
Doing all right. Thank you for taking my call.
How can we help?
I admire everything you guys do and the patience that you take. There's so many callers asking the same question. But my issue kind of runs into what she was just talking about. I was born into a family of believers. So from day one, I was dedicated back to God, and eventually was baptized, went door knocking, praying every morning, doing everything I thought I was supposed to do as a good Christian. And as I've noticed recently, nothing I've ever prayed for has come to pass when it ever mattered. And that's starting to shake my belief to...
Well, I can... This is particular. So this is a little bit fun for me, and I don't mean that in a glib way, because when I was a theist and was starting to notice that it didn't seem like I had any reason to think any prayers were being answered, when you ask a pastor about it, they just say, well, God answers all of them. It's just that sometimes he says no. And I found that to just be an absolutely awful answer, particularly when the Bible very clearly says, wherever two or more of you are gathered together, whatever you ask for in my name, I will grant, which means that if two true believers had ever asked for an end to poverty and ever into suffering and into cancer and into children being, afflicted with malaria, then it wouldn't exist, which means that no two believers in the entirety of the history of Christianity have ever gotten together in agreement on the way the world should work. So clearly that verse is a lie. Because I've been in a building where everybody in the building all prayed for the same thing and it didn't happen. And so then the response then is, well, when God says that, when the Bible says, whatever you pray for in my name and ask, I will grant, that comes with the caveat of I will grant if it's in my plan, because everything happens according to God's plan. But if everything happens according to God's plan, then that means that every prayer that people, intercessory prayer or an activist prayer has been put forward, it's always whether or not it's according to God's plan. And if it was part of God's plan, it didn't matter whether anybody prayed for it. So things are going to happen the way God wants it, whether you pray or not, which means prayer is useless.
That's what it's feeling like. And every prayer that I prayed for, when the outcome came out negative, it was demonstrably worse due to the circumstances that outcome created.
Yep. It's an incredibly frustrating thing.
It makes it more difficult to believe that this would be God's will to create more suffering, more pain, more difficulties.
And the apologetics are, it's not God's fault, it's our fault. We brought sin and death into the world. God's plan, God's plan doesn't have anything to do with human life in this realm. God's plan has to do with an afterlife. And so the entirety of human existence within Christianity, I never realized this is different for other gods, but the entirety of Christianity is this life is a place to wipe your feet while you get ready to go to the real world, the one that's going to last forever. And so you'll be judged on this life. But this life, as the Bible says, is like dirty rags. And what happens here doesn't matter. You have no God-given rights. You are just puppets. You are going to do whatever it is that God has preordained that you do. He knows where you're going to end up. He's known that from the beginning.
Does that mean you have no free will?
Has no interest. He saves who he wants to save. It's an incredibly frustrating thing. Now, the theists, the pastors that you might interact with,
come on, if
will
you're
probably
watching this,
tell you
get those
God's
fingers
not a
tapping
vending
on the
machine.
keyboard.
You don't
What
just
do you
get
think?
prayers in and get what you want out. But the truth is, it doesn't matter what you say or do. It doesn't matter what you pray for. There's zero evidence, never has been, that prayer does anything, except there's an exception. And that is when the Templeton Foundation did a study on intercessory prayer. They studied people who were sick with an illness, and people were praying for them to get better. And they were divided into a couple different categories. People who were prayed for and people who weren't. And the people who were prayed for and people who weren't did about the same as far as their improvement went. But there were, within the prayed for group, there were two separate groups. One group of people who knew they were being prayed for, and one group of people who did not know they were being prayed for. And the people who knew they were being prayed for did worse. Now, if prayer did anything in that study, it's knowing that you were prayed for, put performance anxiety on the people. Oh my God, people are praying for me to get better. I better get better. And that anxiety, this is the speculative part, led to them not.
Yeah, that's an assertion. We don't actually know that's
or
true.
they didn't put forward certain efforts that they would have if they weren't under the
Yeah,
impression
but we're
that they were already
speculating
being
now.
prayed
We don't
for.
actually know that.
And so at the end of the day, in one of the best prayer studies done, prayer seemed to have no effect unless you also knew you were being prayed for, and then you would do worse.
Okay, so pretty much, little backstory, both of my parents died a year apart just recently, both from cancer.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
My mother was dying first. Thank you. I prayed every morning, prayed with other people, kept moving forward, and when that outcome came out horribly wrong, I've been pretty much operating on Pascal's wages since then. Well, it's better to believe than not believe.
Yeah.
And why quit now? I've been doing it this long.
Okay, this is quite
And
sad.
the thing is that it's not. I mean, Pascal's wager is wrong, because if there's 100 potential gods you could believe in, then you have a 99% chance of picking the wrong one, which means you're more likely to piss off 99 other gods or potential gods than you are about the one you picked. So it already doesn't work.
I feel like I did already.
Yeah. I can tell you that I know why it feels that way, but I don't think you pissed off any god. I don't think there's any god to be afraid of. I don't think there's any god to be praying to. And that what happened is a religion convinced you of something, and you've just found out that what they convinced you of isn't real, irrespective of whether there's a God. But to me, the fact that if there was a God who genuinely cared about you, why would a God let you sit there and desperately plead to them or to some other God and not intervene to let you know that they're real, they care, and here's how you do it right? The fact that a God won't step in for that means that there clearly isn't a God that cares about you and what you desire, no matter how sincere and desperate you are, no matter how much your heart is breaking. There isn't a God that is compassionate enough to actually interact with you and say, hang on, you're praying to the wrong God, or hang on, it doesn't matter which God you're praying for. I see the truth of your heart and the pain that you're going through, and I'm going to take this step no matter who you're praying to. Nothing like that is true, given the number of times that prayers go unanswered.
No, that's true.
You know, I think it's funny is the fact that so many religions tell people, all you got to do is believe. That's all. That's it. And then you believe. Oh, well, but you also have to like pray and go to church every Sunday, and you also have to do all of these other things. That's not all. It's like they're lying. That's not all you have to do. You have to follow so many rules that you're supposed to just
turn out the way
know.
You're supposed to.
Does anybody truly believe that prayer works?
It's your fault.
But God already knew it was going to happen, but it's your job to just experience it anyway and then figure it out. Even though he already knows the answers, it's just like a rat race, I guess.
Yep. God's just giving you enough rope to hang yourself is what they're suggesting. But the truth is that there's no evidence for the God, no evidence for the rope, no evidence for the... It's none of it. It's story after story after story, and it's all... I'm empathetic to what you're going through, and I greatly appreciate you calling in. I'm sorry that we had to do it at the end of the show when we're already over time, and I've got to cut this short. please.
Bad timing.
Feel free to call us back and let us know where you're at, what's going on, and any other thoughts you have. I would also recommend reaching out to recoveringfromreligion.org, where there are trained counselors specifically to address all this. I genuinely wish we weren't 10 minutes past the hour and we had more time to go into it. So I thank you for your call. I'm very sorry for your loss. I'm happy that you're starting to see some of the problem with religion. And I hope things work out for you. And I hope you reach out to Recovering from Religion and us. Call us again. Let us know how you're doing.
Thank you for your time and your advice.
Thank you very much.
Thanks and good luck, because that's a thing.
Yeah, good man.
Yeah, that's good luck, because I love that. I would have never thought of saying that. Anyway, thank you, everybody. Somebody emailed me this week because on Wednesday night I did a show of the Hang Up, and I talked about CDC guidelines and how they were coming under fire from Republicans and hadn't relaxed the guidelines. And I talked about maybe the reasons for that. And then Thursday morning, the CDC announced all of their new guidelines, including the fact that vaccinated people no longer need to wear a mask except in incredibly isolated situations, like if you're on public transport and things like that. You can find the guidelines there. I realize that the guidelines in your area may be different. For example, I think the Austin mask requirements are in place until the 18th, unless the mayor has rescinded the order since Thursday, but I think there's no reason to. He's just going to keep it in place till Tuesday, and probably won't be renewed. Irrespective, somebody wrote in and say, why is Matt so keen on the mask? Why? There's no science for this. Yes, I followed the science start to finish, and yesterday I went out and I played disc golf with some vaccinated friends of mine and had a wonderful time and managed to hug people for the first time in ages. Whatever the guidelines in your area, follow them. It's following the science and doing the things that keep us all safe. To diminish the impact of a global pandemic is important. As the world makes its way back to something close to normal, I hope all of you come out of the funk that you've been in. All of us come out from underneath the oppressive depression that many of us have had to deal with, of being alone. I hope that we do it safely and sanely. And I hope that as we make steps to begin opening the Atheist Community of Austin, which will take some time, we've got to transition back to doing things in the studio. Then once everybody's vaccinated and in control, we will eventually be reopening. Can't wait for people to come down and interact with us the way we used to, with perhaps some alterations, like showing people that you're actually vaccinated as we move forward from this. The decisions haven't been made, but please take care of yourself and each other. When I talk about the science and the guidelines and wear a mask and get vaccinated and all of this, it's all talk to your doctor, follow the guidelines. But if you're making the decisions on your own, if you're questioning the vaccine, it's absolutely my prerogative to say, I don't want to hang out with you. And if you think that ostracizes you, as a caller to Talk Heathen did today, I'm sorry. But you made the decision to not take the step that protects all of us. And that forced me to make a decision about what steps I'm going to take to protect me and mine from you. It's not like there's good science questioning the vaccines. But I'm not here to preach about vaccines or masks. Whatever the science is, whatever your medical experts are telling you, is going to be better than anything that you've done as an internet armchair expert. We want all of you healthy. We want to have a massive Bat Cruise Super Festival extravaganza here in Austin, where people are coming from all over the world to interact with us and to do it safely. I want everyone who finds their way out of religion to be comfortable with it and not be panicked. I don't want people sad and upset. I want the second caller of today, and perhaps the first caller of today as well, since Peter learned a lesson in the immediate call, rather than the ones who won't answer the question straight up. I don't want to confuse people. I don't want to dig in on things that people don't know about. Because at the end of the day, as we get towards the end of the calls here, if there were a God, why isn't he answering prayer? Why isn't he helping people? Why is it that if you're not part of the right church and the right religion that you can cure Sam's mom's cataracts? Why is it that people running around feeling as if they're left alone by the structures that religion have put in front of them? Why is it that Jenna and I can be so happy, can be so enthralled by the wonder of the universe, and be so cooperative in working with each other to help build up our community and yours, when we don't believe that there's any God at all. Maybe it's because we don't believe there is a God, that we are left to solve our own problems, that I'm here to help Jenna, Jenna's here to help me, we are here to help you, and we're all in this together. That's the reason we do what we do. We'll see you all next week. Please stay safe. Take care of each other. Bye-bye.
Okay, and I'm going to pause there, and I suppose I could actually just let the music go and just turn it down. That's kind of nicer. Okay, so I'm going to close this down now. Can I please remind anybody that's watching this, stay safe. If you get a chance to get vaccinated, then get vaccinated, because that is important. Wear a mask to protect other people from you. And remember that you need to stay healthy. Eat well, drink well, sleep well, exercise if you can. The most important one of all of that is to sleep well. Get plenty of sleep. You need at least 8 hours of sleep. If you're not getting that, then you're going to run a risk of really slowly degrading your kind of life experience. So try and make sure you get some sleep, and look after your parents, because they are really important. So yeah, take care. Do good.